uh, we are a global platform mobilizing emerging tech talent from global tech hubs, from skill-rich regions to areas with skill shortages. So technology today is pushing the boundaries of human possibilities and working towards making life better across the world by accelerating social and financial inclusion. It has also taken on the critical task of making people and the planet healthier, right? With India emerging as one of the largest technology hubs and companies in India chasing audacious goals, it brings emerging tech at the forefront. The idea of this series is to trigger an exchange of viewpoints amongst experts like yourselves, and how we and see how we are placed as a nation to seize the opportunity in these emerging tech areas. With the EV revolution in India, of course, EV has gained significant traction in the recent years as a cleaner and more efficient alternative to traditional gasoline-powered engines. With advancements in battery technology, a growing network of charging infrastructure, and increasing consumer demand, EVs have become a viable option for many drivers around the world. India is the third largest automobile market globally in terms of sales, ahead of Germany and Japan. There is now a push for manufacturing and policymakers to collaborate to shift demand towards greener options. The automotive sector is a major contributor to India's economy, accounting to close to 7.1% of its GDP and providing significant employment. The Economic Survey 2023 predicts that India's domestic electric vehicle market will see a 49% CAGR between 2022 and 2030, with 10 million annual sales by 2030. Additionally, the electric vehicle industry is projected to create around 50 million direct and indirect jobs by 2030. The charging infrastructure is being expanded with investments from both government and private companies in setting up charging stations. India's electric vehicle market is poised for a significant growth in the coming years, with supportive government policies, increasing consumer awareness, and advancements in technology. The country is well positioned to transition towards a sustainable and eco-friendly mode of transportation. As the demand for EV increases, it presents a tremendous opportunity for both the international companies and Indian companies to invest in and contribute to the growth of India's EV ecosystem. So let's hear it, from the experts here. There's a massive opportunity. With this opportunity comes a lot of challenges as well. So let's see how we can deal with some of these challenges. To supercharge this discussion, we have Satish Rajkumar, who's the head of IT and digitalization, battery optimization and monitoring at Volvo Energy, with several years of experience in the automotive field. Satish has been driving and propelling Volvo's growth ambition journey to a sustainable future. As a member of Volvo Energy's executive leadership team, since its creation in September 2021, he has been instrumental in the company's mission to achieve a fundamental breakthrough in electrification with great people and applicable partnerships. As an industry leader with a keen focus on the role of digitalization in driving decarbonization, Satish is passionate about harnessing the power of technology to shape a better future for all. With his wealth of expertise and insights, we're eagerly awaiting the engaging discussion that shall ensue on the status of the EV industry in India and how far we are from assuming a status of a global leader in this space. Before we begin, just a gentle reminder, this is a closed room discussion, so you can really be vocal about what you say. It will be attributed to you as an individual in case there's a challenge quoting your company's name. The session, of course, is being recorded. A copy of it will be shared with you at the end of the session. And if you have a viewpoint, please raise your hand and we will come to you to talk to you. Satish, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Avinash. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
very, very happy this morning to interact with such a lot of expertise around the table and around the Zoom call today. So my name is Satish, and thanks Avinash for a generous introduction. Let me start with a small sharing to set the context of this, and I'd like to go around the call to take, each of you can take about 5 minutes each to talk about in that context which I set, right, with this. So if I can share my screen, 1 second. Tell me when you see it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just take this off here. Right, 1 second. So when it comes to the, I just put this picture there. I mean, we use this picture very much in our company, but I was thinking that it sets a good context of the EV revolution there, which is powering India. And India is really in the forefront, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot of this today. I am here to moderate the session, but I'm here also to learn, right? I have a bit of a good amount of global context, but in India, I'm really looking forward to see there are many, many things which have happened here. I'm looking forward to learn today as well. So I feel we are in a journey where we are accelerating electrification, but the important element is also towards driving circularity for a better tomorrow for ourselves and for our children and the next generations to come, not only in India, but also world around. So this is what we as a community of people are facing, that we are in an acceleration journey, but towards a better cause for the future. And then with that, I wanted to present this page. Do you see my screen, right? Yeah. So I just take this off there. So I would like to set the context of a framework where we can channelize our thinking. So number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and around it you see the first life, you see the second life, and you see enablers there. So on the framework which I like to introduce, I'll take a few minutes to introduce, is in number 1, where there is a big contribution in the EV space globally and in India when it comes to batteries. How do we get the batteries? How do you install the batteries? How do you monitor the batteries? How do you optimize the batteries? And there's a lot of focus on batteries along with the powertrains needed there, be it the truck industry, car industry, or the two-wheelers and whatever not. And then if the second area is on charging infrastructure and related EMOB services, right? There are a lot of services coming in the private charging space, public charging space, we call it the EMSP providers, etc., etc. And there is a lot of focus when it comes to private charging, public charging, and between hybrid charging as well. And in the technology elements there is a lot of focus when it comes to what kind of superchargers, etc., etc. There are many, many technologies in the charging space. Then when it comes to the third area is remanufacturing, refurbishing, and recycling. This is a space I truly believe is very important for India and also for world around. When we are extremely good in managing this, in many other areas we've done this in the past, where we take a battery out and we remanufacturing it, take out the modules, put all set of new modules, and then use it. Refurbishing is change a couple of modules and you make it work again and bring it back to the state of health as needed. And then the third one is recycling the batteries, which is very important here. A lot of regulations are coming here. Even beyond regulations, this is our responsibility. Going back to the previous statement, it is the future, sustainable future which we create. Recycling is another important element there. Number 4 is repurpose. Okay, how do I get the better juice out of the battery, right? How do I make sure that if the state of health drops below 80%, which I cannot use it for the first purpose, how can I create a second life for those batteries? And then digitalization to decarbonization, right? There is a lot of focus on digital, creating services, creating ecosystems, creating platforms. There are many, many things happening in the digital world. And I truly believe digitalization this time will be an accelerator when it comes to these technologies. And then last but one is create partnerships. I mean, we have Professor here and we have quite a lot of partnerships with the government, partnerships with companies, partnership with startups. There are many possible partnerships in this ecosystem. And I mean, yesterday we were talking about in our company, European Union has made a lot of changes as late as last week, and that leads a lot of participation to create that charging infrastructure in Europe, not only for the cars, but also for the trucks and buses. And number 7 is people. People is the center of it all. And I really appreciate GTX for taking this opportunity to call us together. And I believe, and I'm sure you also believe, there's going to be a lot of change when it comes to relearning competences, acquiring new competences and skills. It's not only skill, but also the will to change as well. So these are the 7 areas I believe we can take our discussion today while we talk about powering India's progress with EV revolution. And let's remember, we're talking about accelerating electrification and driving circularity for a better tomorrow. So remember the first life, the second life, and the 7 areas, and we can come back during the discussion today. So with that, I would like to, with that quick introduction, I will take out my sharing. Hope this context setting was useful. The 7 areas, hope that was able to talk about the EV revolution in India and how we can think. I mean, I'm sure there are many people here come from different contexts there, and let's see how we can get the moderation done. Any questions at this stage before we get deeper into it so far on what I presented? Excellent. Then I mean, one question I'd like to start with is, I would like to, each of you can take 5 minutes each, right? We can, and the question I have is, I mean, if you can imagine the world of EVs by 2030, how you see the EV story panning out both world over, which includes India as well, when you look at the 7 blocks I presented today? How do you see the 2030 story in the context of the 7 blocks? And again, I repeat, it's batteries and the equipments we put those batteries into, charging, remanufacturing, refurbishing, and recycling, and then the repurposing, digital elements to it, partnerships, and people. In the context of the 7 blocks, how do you see how do you imagine the world of EVs by 2030? It'll be also good for you to explain your challenges you see and also the opportunities you see. So if you can take 5 minutes, and whoever wants to start, you can start, and then we can keep going with an introduction of yourself and the topic which you just mentioned. Please introduce yourself as well. Whoever wants to start.
Okay, good morning. I will start. Oh, okay, please, you can proceed. Parag ji, please proceed.
Okay, thanks, Gopi, sir. Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Darshan. I represent a startup called Nunam, N-U-N-A-M. We basically focus on the second life piece of the value chain, which Satish just explained. And we've been operating since last 3-4 years and primarily focusing on R&D part so far, and now productizing second life batteries in India. Yeah, having said that, the picture I would like to paint for 2030 from an EV ecosystem perspective would be, from a techno-commercial point of view, a digitally driven shared risk ecosystem, which drives all the participants or the stakeholders in the value chain to be part of the TCO paradigm, where we all work together to reduce the total cost of ownership of EVs and make it more affordable and sustainable. So here, the beauty, I guess, in this EV sector is we are able to merge business requirements and climate requirements relatively well as compared to other ecosystems. And if it is looked at from the scope of a digital ecosystem being set up with a clear financial incentive defined around it for each stakeholder in a shared risk manner, I think that could propel a lot of activities where people collaborate both on technology level and at operations level to create the true circularity around the ecosystem. And I guess it is, we don't have to term it as essential, but it's quintessential to make it happen. We have no choice but to make it happen. Yeah, that would be my opinion. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Darshan. Please go ahead, Mr. Gopi.
Yeah. So, good morning to all. Myself, Gopi Shankar. I'm a Vice President leading the advanced engineering at Ashok Leyland. Prior to this, I was the Chief Engineer for the AVTR platform, which was India's first modular platform. Now, quickly coming to the points what Satish has indicated, the 7 steps on this. These are main points. There is no doubt about it. But I will touch some of the key points there. If you take the first point, which is the battery, there's need to really improve the power density, because frankly, today one of the biggest concern, at least in commercial vehicle, we are seeing is how many batteries to package and what is the charging time. So that is something is, I'm quickly coming to that point, because that is going to drive technologies either to increase the amount of charge in the battery or to reduce the charging time. These are some two major, which are the two major customer requirements, which is seen as a major detriment to see someone group. So that's in the battery technology. Second point, you are indicated about the charger infrastructure. That's a very valid point. Vehicle is one part of the puzzle. The other big part is the availability of the chargers. We should. The point here is that technology of the chargers are quickly changing. From what it was 120 kilowatts becoming megawatts, and now people are talking about 1 megawatts in Europe. So that should charge much faster. And that's now, if you go ahead and install today's chargers or wait for some time and install the latest chargers, that's a big question which is there. So I have been talking to some of the chargers, private players, and they have this big dilemma. I can install today, but you know what? Once I install it, then there'll be a new technology coming up, and we have to redo the capex of it. So this is on the particularly on the chargers point. The third area I want to touch quickly is a partnership, which was mentioned there. So that's partnership is again an important thing, because I will touch upon what Mr. Darshan also told regarding the TCO. The TCO is what is going to sell the EV rather than the acquisition cost. Acquisition cost is going to be higher than the diesel, no doubt about it. So TCO is going to be key. And for TCO to happen, you need to have a couple of partnerships. One maybe with finance teams who can, provide better way of innovative financing models, or maybe initial government incentives to start the entire, the EV progress in the entire country. So what we have seen is there are 4 major blocks that is coming in the TCO. One is definitely the acquisition cost, which is coming in a big way. That is contributing to, because today's acquisition cost somewhere between 5x to 6x, that has to come down to at least 2.5 to 3x. And then the second big area is, of course, the charging infrastructure, which is required to take this to the next step. The third is the financial model. The financing model will become a very key important aspect for popularizing the EV. And last, obviously, is the government policy. So just a quick summary, I thought. Thank you.
I can go next if it's okay. So
Please go down.
So first of all, thank you all for this opportunity, and thanks GTX for this. I am Manu Srikantaswamy. So until last couple of days back, I used to be the former director for product programs for Ola Electric. So I have overseen, let's say, what we call the flagship Move OS, the operating system that powers the 2-wheelers and eventually the 4-wheelers and more. So vehicle software, vehicle engineering, product management, and things like that. So I've transitioned out. I'm taking a break now, playing with my second daughter, who is just 7 months old. So that's pretty much where I am. Talking about 2030, call me more of a fantasy guy, but how I would like to see rather look back from 2030 is that I'm sure all of us have been traveling to either at least I would say I can speak for myself. So when I started my career way back in 2009 with Toyota, the day I landed in Nagoya and saw Toyota City, so I always had this dream that why can't India have one such city which is dedicated to which is synonym to, in some sense, a brand, right? So you can see that with Volvo in Gothenburg, Stuttgart, for Daimler. So probably if you look back from 2030, purely from an India context, probably I would see more such cities or ecosystems within India with large OEMs and then the supplier bases around that from a let's say end-to-end perspective. So why I say that is that I think that's if you look back, I think automobiles have been an integral part of any country's economic development. And talk about Japan or Germany or US. So you have those big brands which are which are well established and which has created lots of jobs and economic opportunities. And I think India, in some sense, have, let's say, Tatas and Mahindras, but I think there's a lot more potential. So if I look at it from that perspective, at least India would need 50 unicorns from a well-to-wheel perspective, if I talk about it. So starting from, let's say, lithium-ion refining to sort of OEMs, at every step you would need unicorns who would drive newer ways of working, cutting edge technologies, and sort of expanding the horizons. So this is purely from an India context, and as a believer, I would like to see every automobile on the road an EV in some sense. So that said, having this ecosystem developed, and I think the next century at least, we should be able to be when we talk about the world-renowned brands, right? So at least we should have 2 or 3 brands from India when we talk about the world. So and I think that is from that is a large opportunity that we will have to capitalize on and then grow on that. So that's purely from my perspective.
Thank you, Anup.
I would like to go next if that's not an issue.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So I kind of agree with a lot of people over here and slightly disagree too. Like the way I see going forward by 2030 is the charging infrastructure growth rate that I was expecting about 2 to 3 years ago is not exactly what we are seeing right now. We were very reliant on the fact that four-wheeler market will grow rapidly in electric domain and accelerate the charging infrastructure growth, which obviously hasn't happened. And since that contributes more towards the economy, the driving factor towards people for adopting charging network has not yet accelerated to the rate we were expecting. So that's the first challenge we see, that most of the cars right now are moving towards hybrid and hydrogen technology. And that's what the trend shows. Electrification will be slower in terms of energy adoption, and alternative methods of propulsion will be more favored in the next coming years. So charging infrastructure growth, which was supposed to be driven by the four-wheeler growth, is being hampered. Also, the isolation of two-wheeler market in EV right now in India is one of the major problems, where two-wheeler market is majorly isolated towards electric only, and four-wheeler market is diverging towards multiple different folds. I think Mr. Gopi will agree with me in this terms, that buses are already moving towards hydrogen technology rather than electric directly, or a hydrogen hybrid rather than electric. So charging dependency on charging network will go drastically low in the coming years. Again, the next problem that I see is the failure of swapping technology, or the swapping policy that was supposed to drive most of the propulsion in two-wheelers. The demand for power in electric two-wheelers varies from 250 watt to multiple kilowatts for the motor side, and it varies from 1 kilowatt to 8 kilowatts in terms of batteries. So the demand and supply game over here has a broad spectrum which cannot be satisfied with one single policy. And whatever changes we have seen in that are like standardizing everything into one single box. So everything they are trying to fit in one box. So this might prove to be a challenge going forward, since not everyone can adopt to the same basket. Uh, as in the first discussion, as we said that the cost of ownership is the driving factor for the overall development. The problem is that cost of ownership benefits are more centric towards the end of the ownership cycle, where you get the payback for the second life of battery, or when you get the payback for the scrapping of your vehicle, and those are not distributed evenly towards the first half. That is where people are having the most problem adopting to the technology. They are not getting the exact benefits when it comes to first purchasing the vehicle, and then they are not getting the exact benefits when it comes to the operational cost in the initial terms. Moving forward, when they are having the savings and when they are going towards regular operations and utilizing their vehicle to the modest, like someone driving only 10 to 15 kilometers a day on their electric vehicle is not actually benefiting a lot from the offset cost compared to someone who is driving 100 kilometers, such as fleet operators, riders. That's where that is what somewhat the domain where our customer base generally comes from. Those are the real beneficiaries of this technology. So the cost of ownership should somehow be offsetted towards the initial cycles of the ownership also. That will help the adoption more. Apart from that, general problems don't really exist. We have seen a faster rate of adoption in people whose livelihoods directly depend on the vehicles, such as fleet owners, fleet operators, gig workers, all these people who are utilizing their vehicle to the fullest. So that's more or less from my end.
Thank you very much, Raj.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Good to have this diverse thinking there. That's very nice. And then
Thank
we
you.
can discuss a little bit. Excellent. Please go ahead, Harish.
Just to good morning all. Thanks for giving an opportunity. I'm humbled to be part of this esteemed guest and discussions. I'm now part of Revolt Motors and a vice president for R&D. We have a technology center in Bangalore, and we are primarily looking after battery vehicle integration and little of electronics. Prior to this Revolt, I was in Ola. I was senior director and the battery head, and all those battery we made a great successful story in very short time. Okay, I mean, one thing I very thankfully I see good summarization from Mr. Satish on 7 bullet points of the overall EV and integration and ecosystem. 1 or 2 points I just wanted to touch upon. When we make a basic analysis of any user profile, I mean, on an average, a user uses about 60 kilometers per day. We see there is a substantial saving by every user, almost 3,000 to 4,000 rupees per month, which actually make them, I mean, give a good education for the children, which is a big thing, of course. Given any scenario, I mean, as long a user can have a vehicle, basically our Revolt vehicle costs about 225,000 rupees, and given the saving, probably the EMI of the vehicle itself can be covered well with that saving. So definitely there is a substantial saving to all households as far as any EV and its usage is concerned. But moving forward, like how it impacts to the pollution, green carbon saving, etc. That in fact, I mean, little debatable in my sense, primarily because it's more like removing the off-road pollution off-road, but at the source level, it's more or less remain. Niti Aayog's projection says that it is by 2030 they are estimating, or probably they are expecting or projecting about 70% of penetration of EV for all commercial vehicles and about 40% for private vehicles. And in the segment wise, they are talking about 80% penetration to three-wheelers and two-wheelers. Very much in very much in line as far as the so far growth is concerned. But however, unless we have a ramp up or catch up on the renewable energy sourcing, and as long as the coal heavy grid line remains, we may not probably get a lot of benefit of on pollution side or making a pollution free environment, etc. Unless we catch up. Say ASSOCHAM and Ernst & Young made a study. I just had a recent reference. They were talking about 70 terawatt hour is the kind of energy requirement just for EV if the respective penetration happens expected by 2030. But our estimated projection on the green energy side, any renewable, considering the solar primarily and some part from the wind energy, etc., is coming to almost 500 gigawatt hour. That's the projection for 2030 itself. So we are probably somewhere about 10% of the overall energy requirement from met from the green energy side, right? And that also involves huge cost of investment as well. We are talking about almost 25 lakh crore of investment to meet this level of a 500 gigawatt hour of renewable installations. So huge spending. A country like us will have a lot of capex in making this ecosystem successful. Unless otherwise, of course, even though a fast pace growth of EV, definitely it makes some sense in some way economically, but at the same time, if we talk about a kind of overall green credit side, we definitely will have to catch up more on. It's not about slowing down EV. My point is to emphasize more on catching up on the green renewable side. And one more point I just wanted to touch upon is the whole ecosystem. In fact, the vehicle customer tuning to the specifications of the vehicle and overall the infrastructure altogether is all roaming all around the success of new chemistries and how the battery is being developed. Primarily the cost, specifications, everything is being driven by batteries now. And batteries is primarily driven by chemistries and its advancements. We can also touch up briefly on what are those challenges on those advancements in batteries and chemistries and how this could actually define the future scenario. Not too many investments, as Mr. Gobi was rightly mentioning, people are all little skeptical, making huge investment in this area because of this heavy dynamism. Everything is changing. Tomorrow, fuel cell could compete this region, even newer, because a fast charging, probably fast charging and define with a rapid charging, say 2-minute charging. Hydrogen can actually make a 2-minute of fuel refueling, right? And what if a battery can compete equally with a 2-minute of charging? Quite possible. If the chemistry is very much in line, a 2-minute of charging is quite possible. More or less, it's even now possible, but with certain level of technical challenges. With all that happening, we will see everything roaming around that. So if I have a fast charging, definitely swapping system will not work, right? Will not be necessary at all. Then most of those challenges will actually come into the grid balancing, how much of charger and heavy capex on the charging infrastructure, etc., to be implemented. So quite obvious why huge investments or trillions of dollars of investment not flowing in. Pretty obvious reasons of technologies and its uncertainties, and of course, it's all for good, definitely. But it takes time to stabilize over a period. And that's it. I mean, probably while continuing, we'll have more touch upon these points and have further discussion on. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Harish. Can you hear me? Excellent. We will come back on this when we do a more discussion. Excellent. I have taken note of your 3 points there. So I think Professor Parag wanted to say a few words. I think he was pressing the button last time. But please, Professor, go ahead.
Okay, this is Parag. I'm from Denemer. Denemer is a 60-year-old company based out of Luxembourg. So I represent Denemer in India. So our job is mostly in the area of consulting, right? So we do a lot of consulting in the space of mobility as well. So I'm coming from a different industry. We are neither a OEM, neither a supplier, right? So some of my perspective would be more at a system level, and also I will also try to bring some global perspectives to this thought process, right? So your question was how you see in 2030 the overall EV, right? So I see a couple of vectors to this equation. One is not just the technology, but also the new business models that we see will evolve. Because one of the things which I hear from all the other speakers here as well is there is technology and technology needs development, but at the same time, it has to merge with the right business model to have a good market feasibility, right? So new business models will evolve. And why I'm saying that is, if you look at the car today, the EV itself, right? It might be a commodity. The car itself might be a commodity. It might be actually a huge complex software system with battery and motors and wheels attached, right? And this is what will change the way the overall automobile market will evolve. So business models will change, I guess. And for example, instead of using battery as a part of the car, it can be taken out and say battery as a service, and then that will probably reduce the initial cost of the car itself when an end consumer buys the car. So that business models will evolve. Second thing we see is the ecosystem will also evolve, because when we look at the EVs, it's not just a car, it is also an energy source. It is integrated with the grid. You can take power from the grid, you can give back the power and stuff like that. And other thing which someone touched here is how green is the grid? How smart is the grid, right? All these things has to evolve. It's not a standalone system. It is integrated with the overall bigger system. So the overall ecosystem will evolve, and it will evolve not only in India, elsewhere also, but we need to be cognizant of the fact of our own challenges and of our own strength, how to actually adopt those systems and also create our own, systems and solutions for that. That's the second thing. Third thing, I think, is user behavior. I believe user behavior is also changing. When we talk about the bigger goal of having EVs is the sustainability goal, reducing carbon emissions and all that. But again, if you go deeper, there are certain nuts and bolts there. So for example, the use of EV as an individual versus use of EV as a commercial vehicle, the commercial vehicle is a lot more greener because you are using it repeatedly, right? As compared to the vehicle which is parked in your parking most of the time, right? So maybe going from a car as a individual property to car as a service, that might also evolve with time as a combination of business model as well as user behavior, And then the fourth thing is technology. To me, technology is going to come forward by default because EV is not just automobile engineering. It is actually a lot of technologies, a lot of enabling technologies coming together. And that is where we also see that EVs will also evolve as AVs, autonomous vehicles, right? So these two technologies are actually coming together. The way EVs are coming forward as well as the way AVs are coming forward, these are merging now. So because you have a lot more software on the car and stuff like that. So electric vehicles will also become autonomous vehicles going forward. Maybe level 3 is already there. We will go to level 4, level 5 going forward. That will also change the way the cars are pursued, because you don't probably need a driver, or you don't need a super skilled driver for doing that. So that will also change the ecosystem as well as the business model. So there are many things which will change in next decade, so to say. Now, when it comes to enabling technologies, it is not just, as I said, like the automobile engineering stuff, not just the battery, actually. Yes, battery chemistries will evolve. I don't think lithium ion is the only battery which will be there 10 years from there. There might be a lot more other battery chemistries which will evolve, specifically with respect to the different verticals, right? So for example, if you look at, if you take out the EV and put it in the mining sector, if you take out the EV and put it in a sector where a lot more harsher conditions are there, probably lithium ion may not be the right chemistry, right? So these things will evolve by default. But other technologies will evolve. I think one of the things would be the software tech, AI tech, when we talk about EVs, right? And also the power electronics thing. I think one of the things which we are taking granted for now is the power electronics. There is a lot more to be done in power electronics when you want to increase the efficiency, and also how you actually reduce the sizes, how you increase the density and stuff like that. So all these technologies will evolve with time, and they're in tandem. They are enabling technologies, and some of these technologies are also horizontal. They do not just apply for EVs; they can be applied for many other places. So all these things together, I think when it comes to 2030, probably the picture will be very, very different from what we are thinking of today. Some of the challenges what we are thinking of today probably might not even exist. Not just because they are solved technically, they may not be needed from business perspective. So those are my few thoughts, and I do have few insights on how this overall industry is evolving, because we are just thinking of it as a tangible industry where a lot of technologies has to be built and stuff like that. But if you really want to become a leader, specifically for Indian companies, I think you also need to build on intangible assets. When I talk about intangible assets, is example, for example, patents, your supply chain, your understanding of the competition, all these things is very, very important. Not just the technology, which is like, feel and touch. I think thought leadership is a lot more important if you really want to control the ecosystem. And the way the ecosystem will evolve will be very similar to smartphone ecosystem. So no one company actually, calls the shots in smartphone ecosystem. There is a huge supply chain, and there is a way intangible assets are used to influence the ecosystem. So that is where I think India do have an opportunity, because intangible assets, when I talk about patents and technologies and know-how, it doesn't always need to be translated to the product, but it has to be properly documented and registered and used as a currency of innovation. So those are some of my thoughts, Satish ji, for now. Thank you.
Excellent. We will come back to you on the potential of global leadership in India. We'll come back on that one. Thank you very much. Very much appreciated. And then we have Partha.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Mr. Satish, for having me here and allowing me to speak. I hope you all can hear me, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So first and foremost, good morning to everybody. And it's quite a complex subject as I see it, because on the face of it, I read that how is it going to empower India's growth story? Then, of course, we are discussing certain nuances of a battery, and which Mr. Satish very aptly put across. How is battery behavior going to impact the society, and what exactly the users and the manufacturers have to do in order to sustain that? So he put 7-8 points there. Then, of course, great August gathering, and I get to hear diverse points of view. And, each one makes very compelling ground for what he's saying. Well, I was wondering from where to start. AI really lacked the ability, knowledge, and, anything to contribute here. B, when it comes to crystal ball gazing, what is going to happen in 2030 becomes quite complex. With no offense meant to anybody, I have seen more often than not, more or less every prediction has gone wrong. Not even one prediction I've ever seen which has come to be true. Nobody could predict that COVID will come and will disrupt the whole universe in this manner. However, be it as it may, as I see it, I don't know whether it is going to fuel India's growth story. Because if EV are to replace ICE, then how is it really going to impact the growth story? The growth is happening from ICE, it is going to replace. So a fundamental question. So I would rather, I'm quite curious in my life, and I would rather ask those questions to all of you, because I really don't have answers to them. When I look back, say 20 years ago, when electric two-wheelers came in and three-wheelers came in India from China, some poor quality things were imported. The idea was this is going to take over because on the cost paradigm, because everything else is in place. What you get for, let's say, 100,000 rupees in ICE, you get it for 20,000 rupees or 30,000 rupees in EV. Within no time, it was proven that that was a completely misplaced understanding. So, what we see today as something working, because, the tendency of a consumer, and you see what happens whenever any technology shift happens, it creates a value migration. And what is a value migration? I would give you an example. Value migration is when we buy anything, because every sale that happens, everything that is sold is also purchased at the same time. So we most often, we think that we are selling it. Probably it is the consumer who's buying it. Now this value migration is for the set of values he chooses to buy a particular solution that changes. I give you an example for you to understand. Some years ago, I mean, I'm taking the example from automobile industry. Buying a geared scooter or a geared car was fashionable because there was no gearless options, of course, but in scooters or two-wheelers, there were some gearless options, and people were finding that gear is a more suitable option because you have torque on demand, you can control things. You see what has happened. Brands like Chetak and Envy and LML and Bajaj, they disappeared completely. In fact, the factory shut down when the gearless scooter came. This value migration is people suddenly realize that no, it is more important to have convenience and comfort while riding so that I can manage the congested traffic better rather than changing and shifting gears. So this technology shift triggers value migration. So if I try to look back, what value migration is actually being triggered by EV? You see, the line is getting blurred by the passing days. If you get to see a car today, many of the things that any car or any two-wheeler today carry are very advanced. And they're also, I mean, ICE cars are having the similar type of features what an EV is having. Think about an ADAS. Think about the connected, cloud-connected technology. All the cars, whether it is an EV or an ICE, they're all having this. So what is that is changing from the consumer point of view, because in the demand side, if you do not have it, of course, supply impacts the demand, because if there is some technology which is being pushed and consumer has no other choice, he will end up buying that. But since there is a new technology shift happening and newer things coming up, I really do not know what is going to trigger this value migration. On the other side, if we come to think of the the ecosystem that we are talking about, look, there was a time when in Taiwan, there were torchbearer of EV two-wheelers, particularly Gogoro and Kimco's of the world. Battery swapping was seen to be the most critical thing. But then everything has pros and cons. And the cons of battery swapping is not really pushing it forward, because the whole idea that the range anxiety that I would be stuck on the road, 100 kilometers is not enough, I need 200 kilometers, is actually fading away, because globally, it is a proven data that people who are in the short distance commute, which is almost 70-75% of the commuters, they don't travel beyond 15 kilometers on an average per day. So if that be the scenario, then an EV with a, you don't really require a battery swapping, and charging at home becomes a great option. And I give you a perspective here. See, consumers or any progress is all about we human beings becoming lazier, and the supplier or the manufacturer or anybody who's able to provide that opportunity to us, we actually go and adopt. For life to become more enjoyable, or let's say our endeavor is to work less. So anything that enables this requirement shifts the technology, or let's say it is adopted. Now think about an EV and an ICE. A simple fact that one doesn't have to go to a gas station to fill gas can be a big game changer. Who thought 20 years ago that home delivery can be such a big thing? I mean, I very clearly remember when Amazon came in India, people were not buying because what do I do if I don't like this? How do I return it? And see, the e-commerce is progressing today because people are buying because return policy is extremely friendly. So what is apparently the negative today can actually emerge as the positive thing. So how is ease of usage, convenience and comfort driving the whole game is the most important part. from the demand side. Of course, from the delivery side or the supply side, if the technology can support that seamlessly, because we are also used to certain kind of experiences. If I ask a consumer that what are the things that you are ready to trade off, his answer would be zero, nothing. See, this myth of cost saving is also very surprising. We think that electric is cost saving. Well, upfront cost is higher, but the TCO is really a consumer bothered. Let's think about a two-wheeler customer. If he is driving 15 kilometers on an average per day, his actual fuel consumption is not more than 1,500 rupees a month, even with 100 rupee fuel price. We may be creating ruckus about it, but eventually his total outlay is not more than 1,500 rupees a month. Is he really looking for saving that kind of money when he can afford a 1 lakh rupee two-wheeler? It's not a motivation for him. And therefore we see, and this is very surprising, and I thought it to be so, and it is actually coming out to be so, all the cheaper, less expensive two-wheelers in electric space are actually losing their market share very fast, very rapidly. And consumers are going very fast adopting Olas and the Bajajes and the, TVSs of the world or Athers of the world. He is ready to pay 1,50,000 rupees or 1,60,000 rupees to buy a scooter when there are electric scooters available for 50, 60, 70,000 rupees. And iScooters, which are proven established for 90, 95,000 rupees. So there is a lesson in that. Therefore, I think if we see how a consumer is willing to behave, because it's not what is happening today, what would be happening tomorrow, what is the latent need that he has. And somebody gave the example of a smartphone. Yes, smartphone changed the paradigm, because telephone used to be for talking. Then telephone became for communication. Now telephone has become your life because it is a computer, which is the world in this. Who thought of this? Even when the smartphones were made, nobody could imagine that. So gradually it kept on evolving. This is important for us to really think that how is EV going to evolve, or is it EV? I think EV is only an energy solution. There could be some other form of energy. Somebody said, hydrogen fuel cell. Of course, if something is easier, see, cost will never be prohibitive, and cost will find its, way. The demand will determine the cost. What would be changing the game is the consumers, meeting consumers' latent need. Whatever can make us more lazy will be adopted. I rest my case here. So thank you. And
fantastic perspectives, Partha. Thank you. Really nice. This creates a nice platform of discussion as we can go along. Thank you. Am I missing anything?
Yeah, Satish, if you could allow me 2 more minutes, I would like to comment something on Mr. Partha's a very nice and brief condensation over here. So, Partha, I really agree with what you put forward when it comes to the customer's adaptation point. And when it comes to a B2C customer, a customer who is going to use this vehicle for daily commute and general purpose only, it is really difficult to find what is the driving factor for his purchase. Right? You just like you very rightly said, cost is not the primary driving factor
motivation.
for what his purchase is going to be. We have still not yet figured out what the exact driving factor is, because India is such a diverse and big market. When it comes to a B2B customer or a person who is going to use this vehicle as an utility, we understood that all the points that you stated in your first half, the range anxiety, the availability of swapping and charging infrastructure, the reliability of the vehicle, and the total cost of ownership, these are all the driving factors. But when it comes to a B2C customer, there are hidden variables. Just to put it in picture, the example you gave about Amazon and Flipkart being dominant in delivery market today, the driving factor was introduction of cash on delivery feature. It was not the ease of the convenience of getting everything at home. It was actually driven by the introduction of the facility where you can pay once you get the product in your hand, and you can actually physically check it at your home. That way, the hidden driving factors between a B2C purchases are yet to be properly understood and driven in this market for the consumer vehicles. Again, your very first comment about we will be wrong about every single prediction that we are going to make about 2030. I think that is the whole point of this discussion. Because as technology leaders, it is our job to make sure that everything that we predict fails and we come up with something even better.
Of course, I fully agree with you. Only thing is, when I talked about the, the e-commerce, what I meant is the convenience factor, whether it is coming from
Yes.
home delivery or host of other things together, did not trigger the movement in the beginning. People had resistance, and see how people have adopted this. So anyway, I mean, of course, I fully agree with you. And remember, there is nothing called B2C, B2B in two-wheelers.
Yeah.
There's nothing
Yeah,
called
I'm just-
B2B. I must tell you one thing. When we talk about B2B, this home delivery or the commercial usage, this is basically goods mobility. Do you know there are almost 22 crore two-wheelers flying on Indian roads?
Yeah.
And out of that, almost 11 crore two-wheelers actually are in goods mobility. They're not in home delivery. And goods mobility is a
Yes.
very, very big thing, because a small cargo that you need to carry for your managing your livelihood. If there was a study made by, TOI, not TOI, actually Economic Times, and this study was very amazing. Sorry, I'm taking one more minute.
Please
It
do.
said that if you stop manufacturing two-wheelers in India, it will have two consequences. Consequence number one, large number of people will be out of their livelihood. And it will trigger some kind of violence and riot. And we've seen that kind of, behavior when from BS4 to I think BS3 to BS4 transition was happening on March end, some few years ago. There was almost a kind of, a riot because the vehicles were not really available. So please understand, B2B, what you say, is also bought individually by a customer and used for his livelihood reasons or commercial reasons. And B2C is also a similar thing. So whenever the vehicle is used for a station and, vehicle is used for longer behavior. I can't mean doesn't mean that a customer who's in B2, he would require cost saving more. Well, that may be one paradigm. There are, even today in home delivery space, almost 80% vehicles are ICE. Why is it so? So, if there is a cost benefit, return, then he doesn't really care. People buy a Volvo bus and not a cheaper bus, and he makes more money. So, what actually is the equation supporting? Anyway, I agree what you're saying to a large extent. Yeah, sure.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. So have I missed anyone else who was supposed to present so far? I think we covered everyone, right? I think we covered everyone. Okay, so I have a couple of areas I want to challenge.
Mr. Satish, my apologies. I have a hard stop at 10, I mentioned. So I would be moving out, and thank you everyone, and my sincere apologies. Maybe you can send me the recording, which I would really like to hear, because such intellectual gathering, I really want to learn from this, right?
Thank you all the very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very best.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye. Take care.
So just to take a little bit more deeper into it, let's start with I have a couple of areas I've clustered the discussion, right? So let's start with Professor Parag there. We talked about potential of EV in industry, and some elements about collaboration between industry, government, and academia, and some policies. If you could capture a little bit about that and say, you heard the participants give a bit of a perspective about this, but I thought let's give a little bit of insight into what's happening between industry, government, and academia in this area and from the policies perspective. If you can say a few words, or whoever wants to jump in. It's not only for Parag, but whoever wants to jump in.
Sure. So, Mr. Satish, I think a couple of things that I would like to put forward, right, very, very swiftly. When it comes to India as a EV leader in the future, there are definitely some very positive things which are happening. At the same time, there are a lot of challenges that needs to be taken care. So we should be aspirational, but at the same time we should be pragmatic. And a lot of these challenges can also be solved by empowering academia and also enabling the relationship between academia and industry. So one of the stuff that we discussed in this is definitely requirement for coming up with new battery chemistries or new electronic stuff, and all those things. So not everything can be taken care by industry, because probably industry is more focused towards applied research part of it, and may not be that much on the fundamental research, which takes a lot more time, is a lot more risk oriented, right? So that is definitely a no-brainer when it comes to collaboration between industry and academia. And I think it's a partnership. It's not one-way traffic, right? So industry needs to enlighten academia about what are the real problems which need solutions, which has a potential of getting into the market as a product, right? At the same time, industry, academia people should, share their understanding and the thought process about some of the fundamental research. Because one thing which academia brings on the table, which I think is cross-pollination between different technology areas, and as we discussed, EV is not just a mobility thing, not just an electromechanical device. It will have a lot more technology on board as compared to normal automobile. So how can we use learning from one area into another area fundamentally from first principles? That is something which academia can bring to the industry. And other thing which I believe very, very important in the near future, which is also related to the larger picture of employment or reducing loss of employment, so to say, if we move from IC to EV over a period of decade, is upskilling. So we do have a lot of people with mechanical background, electrical background, electronics background, but historically it has been one vertical in itself. We had not been very good in creating interdisciplinary areas, so to say. People in the industry develop the interdisciplinary skill on the need basis, but it is not taught so in the academia. So that is one area where there is a lot of potential of industry academia relationship, of upskilling people to make them ready for EV industry. Because, for example, just a mechanical or electrical engineer can't make EV. You need to be a mechatronic guy. So though if you look at mechatronic, where all it is taught, probably not many places, right? And whether that person is ready for the industry. So I think upskilling is also one place where academia industry can support each other apart from research. Those are my thoughts.
Excellent. Then I take another. Any other points on this area from others, like when it comes to industry, government, and academia? How can they really support this EV adoption? Any other thoughts from anyone else?
Yeah, Satish, I can pitch in. Anup here. I think just to add to Parag, I think he already outlaid more or less and touched upon all the points. But it's my point is more a follow up of Harish and Pushkaran. So if you go a little bit deeper on this, two of the biggest challenges that we have in the EV industry. The first is let's say the upfront cost. The second one is, in some sense, the range anxiety, whether it is the range of the vehicle or the charging time. But if you look at the upfront cost, for instance, well, of course, there are several cell chemistries that is being explored, as Harish mentioned. But if you talk about the current aspect of it, which is the NMC and LFP, so I was looking into the data, and I think I was taken aback and I was surprised that essentially the four aspects of the cell manufacturing, the cathode, the anode, separators, and electrolyte. 80% of the cathode is made in China, anode 65%. Separator roughly about 45%, and more or less the lithium ion processing itself, I think China controls about 60% of processing. They import lithium ion from Bolivia and then they process it. So and no wonder CATL has about 34% of market share in terms of controlling this whole ecosystem, right? So where I think. The academia, industry and the government partnership and collaboration plays a major role is partly this. I think moving forward, yes, of course, India has a lot of graphite deposits. We are doing anode, but how do we be self-reliant on other aspects? So we don't have those minerals. So, for instance, we forged a partnership in 2022 with Australia for these precious metals, right? So precious minerals like copper, nickel, and things like that. And I think more number of such partnership is crucial. And I think that is where this kind of collaboration matters a lot. Also, in terms of, let's say, what are all the alternative ways in which we can make this battery and the cell manufacturing and, to next level. That's where I think the academia plays a major role. I think one of the classic examples that I can bring in from my Volvo days is the Chalmers and Volvo partnership in terms of driving innovation, right? So such kind of initiatives are needed within India. So that's my point, actually.
Thank you.
Satish, I just want to kind of come in here. We also have Professor Anil from IIT Kanpur. So, Professor, it'll be great if you can just introduce yourself. And you're coming in the right time where Satish is talking about the industry academia partnership to, build this together. Professor, over to you. You're on mute, Professor.
A very good morning to all of you, and sorry, last moment I had to take a flight and just landed in Delhi. The subject is very, very relevant, and it is something, the narrative which we started in Niti Aayog. And to those who probably are not knowing about my background, I was with the Niti Aayog for last 4-5 years and being a part of the Indian Administrative Service. And I was driving that national mission on transformative mobility and battery storage in the Niti Aayog, which I had set up in 2019. I had a tremendous support from the top leadership of the country. And that also reflects the commitment of the government and our not less than the Prime Minister regarding the clean energy mobility and the clean energy. Now, this disruption we used to talk about is going to impact, and the maximum disruption is going to be in terms of the battery storage and the energy transition, which will also be coupled with the changes in the mobility and how to drive the mobility with the clean energy sources. Now, in this perspective, I would say that this cutting-edge technologies are going to impact our lives to a great extent, rather, I would say, and it's impacting. Now, the issue is that, as you mentioned, regarding the academia industry partnership, and then we made our best efforts to have all the stakeholders along with us, and that was the major part of our activities in the Niti Aayog, and we helped the ministries, departments, and the state governments also to move forward. Now, just to take a point which was just mentioned when I joined this discussion, we published a report way back in 2017 or 2018 in the Niti Aayog, which I had also contributed to that report. 81% of the minerals of the lithium ion battery are found in India. So, 81% and only 19% of it needs to be imported, and there are supply chain available for that. So, well, the thing is that if the industry is not processing those minerals to which can straight away be used for the lithium ion cell manufacturing, then probably we need to shake up ourselves and take steps for that. Number one. Number two, electric vehicle technology is no rocket science. The motor is age-old, decades-old motor, which is being used with minor changes in the material. And but the concepts and everything, it's not like internal combustion engine, which is changes and which is in which the changes are taking place day and night. The issue is that how much of it are we really designing, developing, and then manufacturing in the country? The focus is again on the battery management system. How do we control our vehicle? The role of the electronics is going to be very critical in the EV manufacturing or in the car manufacturing and managing the car, and then the connected vehicles as the topic of this discussion is also very critical. Now, academia industry partnership, yes, there are a number of academic institutions, including the top engineering institutions like IITs. We had interaction with the 23 IITs also from the NITI Aayog, and about 16 of them, I believe, have started a new department by the name of the sustainability or some related name they have given it. The IIT Kanpur, where I have now taken up this assignment, joining the sustainability engineering, energy engineering department, along with the Center for Energy Policy, where I am now trying to add value, whatever little I can do based upon my long innings with the government. So the issue is that it's not that the academia is not moving forward now. I think there's more interaction with the stakeholders is needed. Industry has to come forward. Academia or the institutions have to be together, and they should have a positive interaction to move forward. And in what way do they move forward? Probably initially I would add this much, and in the due course of the discussion, maybe I will add whatever little is needed. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you very much for that. Much appreciated. I wanted to bring another dimension to it, into the discussion, and then get your thoughts there. Let's look at the view of consumers. I mean, Pushpakraj, I will come back to you on hydrogen and
Yes.
I'm looking forward for the lack of swapping, and I mean looking forward for the dimensions. So please think about it. But before that, I want to come and say that when it comes to consumers, right? Is there a way we can educate our consumers, create more awareness? Because now, if you look at it, sustainability is quite a lot of in the corporate world. I can tell you, we work with a customer, one of the customers in Volvo. I will not name the customer here, you know, who is very much, and there are many such customers, right, who are very much into the sustainability journey. But how about our consumers? How sustainable and how much sustainability goes into their consumers, right? Do you reckon any of these things when it comes to consumers, the level of awareness, can anything we can do for creating more awareness from an EV evolution perspective in India? Any thoughts on that?
You want me to answer, Satyajit?
Please go ahead, and Pushpakraj will be second. The Professor Anil.
Yeah, just a few things which come to my mind immediately about the consumer awareness. Yeah. Etc. For the consumer awareness on the electric vehicle, number one. So that is something which is needed. Consumer needs to be educated on the total cost of ownership concept, which is very, very important in that. And to my understanding, the tipping point has already reached to the two-wheeler and three-wheeler segment, and we make 80% of our automobile manufacture is two-wheelers and three-wheelers. So it is, things are moving forward. It's only a question of four-wheeler passenger vehicle where there are some efforts are needed for educating the passenger, and our subsidy, direct and indirect fiscal incentive policies are also designed for that, whether the FAME or other policies. So this is my thought on this. Yeah.
You're on mute, Salish.
Mr. Pushpakraj, please go ahead.
Yeah. So going forward, I really agree with Sir here that there is a nice effort being made from the government and from a lot of players. Like I see Ola putting out commercials for educating customers about how the use of electric vehicles should be in a safer way. So both industry as well as government are putting out the efforts. But at the end of the day, this is really going to be driven by customers' own experience, how they are going to learn about the safety and the usage of electric vehicles and the total cost of ownership. Much similar to what happened with refrigerators and microwaves when they were first introduced. Microwaves are not particularly safe to be used in terms if the customer is not educated. But with prior experience and with the wide awareness from the people surrounding them, it becomes safer for them to use. Same goes with refrigerators. You have high pressure gases. People were not very educated. I have seen a lot of newspaper articles about refrigerator accidents because of people were not educated. These machines got away with this drawbacks because they were simpler in terms of use and in terms of ownership. Electric vehicles, however, they are a little complicated and they take some base knowledge to build upon. So they are not going to get away. A widespread awareness from government and from industry, both are needed to educate the customer in terms of safety specifically.
So I will just add one point here, just a line here. We can shift as must to have or good to have. Today, the ESC is kind of a good to have for two-wheeler, three-wheeler customers, and it is and whereas must to have, they have the TCO as well as the comfort and the convenience at all. The must to have is done. Definitely, they are looking for, because this environment point is well aware. There's a lot of news coming in the media, and people are well aware of the consequence of the environment, temperature increase and all. So this is what I would say, that today I think it is like good to have, whereas must to have, they have the points like the cost, the comfort, the convenience, and all those stuff.
Yeah. So I'll be quoting Mr. Nitinji himself when I'm telling about the next phrase. So last month we met Nitinji regards to our launch of our vehicle, and to explain him how it is beneficial in the commercial segment vehicles. And he was very interested, and he commented that we have to solve one problem at a time. Electrification is one problem that we need solving. How to get that electricity is the next problem that the government is trying to solve. The primary target for solving this problem is the nuclear power plants that they are setting up. There are, I think, close to 13 power plants which will be functional in next 9 years, which will provide the energy that is required for charging the vehicles. Apart from that, the general commuting distance, according to him, was 35 kilometers for an average customer, for average household customer, to be specific. So any vehicle which has a range of 70 kilometers can suffice his problem for 2 days. So anywhere between 40 to 70 kilometers in an ideal range. This brings, why this is relevant is this brings down the total cost of ownership. As Mr. Anup said, that the total cost of ownership has to be offsetted also towards the total life of vehicle. If you bring it down, adoption will be faster. If we understand what customer exactly requires and not push a vehicle, which is like we as engineers have a tendency to create a solution and then look for a problem, and people from marketing have a tendency to look for a problem and then find a solution. If we reach the common grounds in that, then I think the adoption will be much faster.
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, correct.
More comments on this?
Yes, I do want to add a few things, and I do not have the answer for it, but maybe if you talk to an intelligent consumer who is more eco-conscious and stuff like that, there are some answers that are still not, questions for which there are still answers not ready, right? One of the things which Pushkaraj touched upon. So for example, when we talk about sustainability and green energy, is EV really green is the question which comes, because you are taking out the emissions from the tailpipe, but are you putting emissions somewhere else? Because if you're actually using coal plants, then what's the use? Yeah, that's the first question which anybody with reasonable understanding of the ecosystem will ask. And if there is a good answer for it, that we are using these sources, renewables and all that, and also that you're not putting, our grid is not very smart or maybe very efficient, because there is maybe 30 to 40% losses happens from the source to the consumer, right? So putting some thought process on that, either through some campaigns or whatever, provided that such systems are there, that we are actually looking at the energy sources which are a lot greener than what it is today at the end of the at the upstream of the whole overall value chain, right? The utility part. That is one thing. Second thing is we keep on talking about cost of ownership. So one is capex is high today for a consumer, because the vehicle is maybe 30-40% more than valued than the IC engine. But the second question is, what if say 30% of the people actually have EVs on the road? If you look at a normal EV, maybe 30 to 40 kilowatt battery, it is equivalent to maybe 4 to 5 households, energy requirement. And what if I start charging this on the grid? The demand on the electricity will increase, and I'm going to own this car for next 10 years probably. How do I believe that this is a sustainable OPEX over a period of time? Why not the prices of electricity will increase many folds, which has anyway happened in urban area, right? So those are some of the questions which are there in the mind of consumer. Specifically, you are more conscious. In that case, they do have other alternatives, right? Instead of buying the car, use on demand Uber model stuff like that, or maybe use something else. So those are some of the things that we need to understand to put that point. Yeah,
absolutely. Can I stretch your thinking on that one, and maybe we can see one of the things which the customer in the TCO for a customer is the residual value of the battery, right?
Yep.
And which is one of the key elements there, because and many people don't think about the residual value of the battery, but there's a great opportunity with second life, etc., etc. Going back to the picture I showed you about second life.
Yes.
And also, Professor Anil, and you worked on, as I read your resume, work on battery storage. I know a couple of people here also worked on battery storage. Is that dimension of bringing more juice out of the battery, even if the state of health drops to a usable limit, below the usable limit of 80%, can we find a new purpose to the batteries, therefore contributing to the TCO and therefore helping the customer? Is there a correlation between what's your thinking on energy storage? Also, it could solve the problem we have, right, in India, could in a shorter way. Of course, nuclear plants have to come, going back to Pushpak Raj's point, but still in between, we have energy available more during the day and less during the night, and vice versa could be there as well. So how can we use energy storage? So do you see a possibility of increasing the residual value of the battery through better energy storage, and therefore helping the customer, but also solving the technology, the capacity problems? Any thoughts?
Maybe I can just briefly answer that. So typically right now we talk about a life of battery as 80% of the initial capacity as a definition, right? That's how industry follows. So if you see the capacity of the battery starting, say 100% of the capacity, of course, then it drops to 70%, more or less for any chemistry, mostly LFP and NMC considered. We have almost a linear drop of during this 100 to 80% of the surge curve. Eventually, after 75, probably some people extend up to 75, the drop is little drastic. The slope actually increases a little more. However, I mean, see, like take our mobile, right? Many users use up to the extent of 40% also. What happens is basically capacity is now 40%. We have fast charging and fast discharging. The complete usage of energy becomes 40% of the original energy. But definitely, I mean, there is huge possibilities of potential usage beyond 75%, primarily for the energy storage, stationary storage systems. Like mostly some part can actually get into recyclability to extract minerals, I mean, lithium and metals. Plus, some part actually can get into typical storage systems like commercial residential storage systems, and even for small UPS purposes. So that adds, there are many companies working on this in terms of taking those used batteries and actually use it for some other application. So in my view, probably 40% of the original cost of battery remains as per the present definition of end of life of a battery. Say right now, we are talking about almost 17,000 rupees per kilowatt hour. So 40% of that still remains per kilowatt hour in terms of a residual value, just on the battery part. Of course, keeping all other electronics and vehicle, etc., definitely it carries much more value.
Thank you, Harish. By the time another person thinks, this industry, especially in India and otherwise globally, if you take the storage, battery storage industry is about 450 gigawatt hour industry, right? It's a very potential market, and also it helps you with sustainability as well, and also brings a better TCO to our customers, right? Going back to the customer thinking. Any other thoughts on this, please?
There is one thing actually, Satish, that I would like to point out, that we talked a few times about shifting the inefficiencies from the vehicle to the power plant. But if we talk in terms of well-to-wheel efficiency, what we call the entire efficiency from literally extracting the oil to being used inside the vehicle, the well-to-wheel efficiency in terms of electric vehicle seems to be a little better because of all the conversions being involved. And it is easier to control the pollution to some extent at the source if it is centralized. Vehicles, ICE vehicles, because this generation is decentralized, it is at the local vehicle level, it is difficult to maintain the pollution or control the pollution. Catalytic converters do a good job, but they don't do 100% of the job. It is much easier to control it at the well itself. So
This is Pushkar, I agree to this. This is where, we can control, though today it is not a green hydrogen, though we are
Yes.
having something called gray hydrogen, but still
Yes.
the vehicle which carries the emission pollutants all across the city, instead of that, you get it at a one closed area emissions,
Yeah.
and you can start controlling it. Over a period of time, the technology will start coming up, or you can shut down the coal plant and start a, electrolysis plant or something, which can, that is, I think, is one of the, when Mr. Parag also said this is one area. The other area of saying regarding the storage is the hydrogen part, which also Pushkar said. Hydrogen is not considered as it's considered as an energy by itself. Hydrogen is considered as energy by itself. You can, if you have a daylight, you can store it as a hydrogen more efficiently than storing it as an electric power in batteries and retake the electric power back from hydrogen. So that's also one area that may come up in future. If once we know how to handle hydrogen and enough production of hydrogen is also existing. That also needs infrastructure.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I can clearly
I would-
see India leading this whole hydrogen journey, Japan, India, US,
Yeah.
and a lot of countries coming up in this together. Great. Yeah.
I would like to add one thing to what Satishji you said, like how to incentivize customer, right? Using battery, for example. So one of the things is actually figuring out how to incentivize a vehicle to grid or vehicle to home, because the person who is owning the car is not only owning the car, he's also owning the energy source. Just like for solar, right? If you can actually put the power back into the grid, you get paid for it, or some incentives are there. Same kind of stuff can happen even for EVs, where the battery would be the centralized, thought process.
Yeah, Parag.
So, sorry, Darshan is lifting his hand. Sorry for that. Sorry, please go ahead, Darshan. And then please raise your hand if you don't mind, your digital hand, please.
Sorry.
No, I was not so clear, Prakash. Prakash, it's not your. Go ahead, Darshan.
Yeah, so I just wanted to elaborate on the residual value and the TCO interconnection and how that can propel the entire value chain right up to the pack OEM here, or the auto OEM. So as we see, one of the challenges of residual value, especially let's say more prevalent for larger vehicles starting from 3-wheeler, 4-wheeler, or bus, trucks, is to find a way in which you have a residual value that can suffice some of the requirements or needs to control or minimize financing risks, and at the same time be able to have a value that can be digestible from a downstream customer from an energy storage point of view. So finding that right value that can reduce the TCO and also have an indirect benefit. So if, for example, if there is an assured buyback schema put up in place, so there is a, let's say, percentage drop in the interest rates, and then the down payments can come down. A few indirect benefits like these, which overall reduce the TCO to good extent. And if the OEM is conscious about improving the buyback value, there are a lot of touch points over the life cycle until the point it reaches the consumer, during when it is used in with the consumer, where we can increase the buyback value to a good extent and amplify all these indirect benefits as well. So this is like if you start looking at TCO optimization and reuse as a measurable benefit, I think the industry could achieve a lot of improve a lot of efficiencies in its processes and product development cycle, where reuse could be a factor of design and not an afterthought, which can enhance residual value significantly. And all stakeholders must understand the cost drivers here from reuse, remanufacturing, repurposing, that could improve the business metrics across.
Excellent. Pushpakaj, please go ahead, please.
Yep. Satish, sorry for being so talkative, but I actually have a question to you.
I enjoy that. Please go ahead.
I have a question directed to you, Gopi and Anup, regarding, see, in my recent visit to the Auto Expo, I noticed direct hydrogen internal combustion engines being displayed by both of you. And we all know the lineup that Ola is coming up with their vehicles, two-wheelers and four-wheelers both. So I would like to understand, how are you looking towards the charging infrastructure being developed around your vehicles as you are moving towards the ICE, HIs, and your like electric domain seems to be depleting. And to Anup, that since you are expanding towards four-wheeler, how are you looking towards the charging network to grow?
Go ahead, Gopi. You want to start?
Yeah. So no, Pushpa, of course, we presented, there's a combination of new technologies. One is the hydrogen based, the other is the electric based. Hydrogen can be used in two ways. As you said, one is on ICE directly, consume hydrogen as a fuel, burn it, and then take the power of it. And the other way is use it as a fuel cell. And obviously, the hydrogen ICE is half the efficient of fuel cells. So that's where the electric comes. This is only 30%, that's around 60%. And hydrogen has its own, challenges. But there are two differences. Hydrogen is a zero carbon fuel, whereas fuel cell or electric is a zero emission fuel. Means absolutely no emission. Whereas in hydrogen, you will have some particulates, you will have some set of NOx and all coming up out of this. So that being the difference between the two. But if you see the infrastructure point, the issue is again there. Same like electric, you need a hydrogen infrastructure. Now, how do you handle? There are a lot of technologies or research going on. Is there a way to handle it in terms of cylinders, like tankers, like how you do the diesel, petrol, or there are again solid hydrides, which absorb hydrogen, can give back the hydrogen at different temperature. So this is different technologies being studied. And the one big advantage, of hydrogen is something we can produce ourselves within the country. So government, why they're pushing for hydrogen as a fuel is two ways. One, you can produce hydrogen internally through electrolysis process, through solar power, and we have a lot of water and solar energy. We can produce our own hydrogen. The second point is hydrogen is also being produced as a byproduct in a number of industries. There's a lot of chemical industries, alkali industries, where the hydrogen is coming out as a byproduct. The third point is hydrogen can be used as a power storage. That's again an interesting area where you can use hydrogen to just store power. And you have a direct way of converting hydrogen to electric. So while there are so many positives of hydrogen, of course, there are negatives in how you handle hydrogen, how you store hydrogen, how you distribute hydrogen. So that's again a big question mark. At least in EV, you have a grid lines available. You have to the movement to the transportation is a bit lesser today in EV compared to hydrogen. But hydrogen, you have to develop the entire network. So what we think also there'll be pockets of hydrogen where it will come up in the hydrogen cycle.
Yes, I really don't understand the hydrogen technology that much, and I'm not a good expert to comment on this. But for me, it was more or less becoming a situation that has been with CNG for the last few years.
Yeah.
So hence the question was there. Sorry.
Yeah, see, that is one big difference where you'll have between CNG, LNG versus hydrogen is hydrogen will be produced in India. And we are seeing a big investment. That's one big difference we are seeing. Because CNG, LNG, whatever it is, we import it. And again, there are other issues that are coming up while importing, the price that's controlled. Hydrogen is the big investments. Recently Adani, recently Reliance have all indicated a total of over $50 to $70 billion. But such investment is required for hydrogen to really come up. So that's the difference.
Anup, you want to say more?
Yeah, I think, so thanks, Satish. I think Pushkar, he was addressing the question to me as well, connect to the the charging infrastructure, how Ola would see. I think before that, one quick comment on the fuel cell. I think, it's partly to Gopi as well. So I mean, let's say one is the hydrogen in itself, but if you look at it from a fuel cell and the application perspective, let's say there's the application is more feasible from a commercial vehicle and construction equipment standpoint. My own experience working for Volvo with cell-centric Daimler and Volvo fuel cell joint ventures. I mean, operationally, we are actually going to, I mean, at least as of now, the architecture and the complexity is so high with the fuel cell. If you look at it purely from a truck, I'll give you a simple example, right? So we are looking at it from an India perspective, but look at it from a Sweden, which is, let's say, the very north of Sweden is like minus 30 degrees. The exhaust, which is water, which comes out of the fuel cell, we need a huge tank that need to be placed on the fuel cell vehicle, which in itself is going to add, let's say, a huge weight onto the vehicle. Added to that, at minus 30 degrees, how do you keep it in such a way that it doesn't freeze? And if you drain it out, how? I mean, if every vehicle is a fuel cell, can you drain it out on the roads itself? Is it not going to create some other issues? So these are some of the things that we were brainstorming as well, which maybe is purely operational, but there are application issues still. Maybe from a four-wheeler perspective, it is less complex, and maybe with the temperature and environmental conditions from an India perspective, maybe it is still okay. But largely, if you look at it from a global perspective, it's still way at least we have a lot of time for that. That's my view. Coming to the charging infrastructure, that's a very loaded question, Pushparaj. I think Bhavish is one of the most sharpest individual that I've had opportunity to work with, and the little that I understand from his mindset and ambitions is that let's say how he articulates is that the car that you talked about is not only made for India but for the world, right? So yes. I think the first launch countries includes even US, probably San Francisco area and things like that. So when it comes to do we have the technology of a hypercharger? Yes, we have. Can we deploy it immediately? There are multiple aspects that you will have to look into it. One is also the user behavior connected to that. So it comes with its own challenges. We have seen that as well. So at the moment, we can actually even charge our Ola S1, an S1 Pro with a hypercharging network, which means that it's easily scalable as well. So, however, I think what we have understood or what we have realized is that it's also for example, the consumer behavior change, right? So moving to electric in itself is a big behavioral change, and then the charger in itself, and then the hypercharger. It's a lot to digest for a consumer. So technologically, I would say we're ready. Let's say as and when the cars roll out, which is expected to be 2024 January, which is a tight deadline. But then you will start to see, so you will start to see, I think, the hyperchargers rolling out. And I think there is an indication in some sense to go in the Tesla way, right? So.
Excellent, Anup. And then, of course, there are many things coming up here. I want to take another dimension before we come to people, right? If you remember the picture I showed you, Professor Anil, I showed a picture of 7 different boxes here. Box number 1 was batteries. Number 2 was charging. Number 3 was repurpose, remanufacturing, and also recycling. Number 4 was repurpose, and number 5 was digital. How does digitalization can help decarbonize? And number 6 was partnership, and number 7 was people. I would like to touch upon one element, which is digital. We are also sitting in India with a lot of opportunities in the digital world, right? So how do you think, if you have any thoughts, Professor and others as well here, on the digital angle. How can digitalization help accelerate decarbonization? If at all it can.
No, in a current day technologies, nothing can be imagined without digitalization. Now, as I was thinking while this conversation was going on, the competition in the electric vehicle is going to be on the source of energy. Whether the source of energy is going to be the lithium ion or the solid state or some aluminum oxide or aluminum air combination, or finally the hydrogen fuel cell or hydrogen otherwise. So the entire game is changing, on which the various players would be playing their role. So this is all cannot be imagined without the digitization, and that is where probably we as a country have a very strong advantage. Now, Anup was talking about the global scenario of the lithium ion and the Sweden example. The issue is that we are the fourth largest manufacturers of the passenger car vehicles. I'm not talking of the overall automobile manufacturing. Now, in that scenario, if we build upon the size and the scale which this country offers, and the kind of strength that we have in terms of the, the application of the digitization, and even in the finance sector and other sectors where we have done so well in terms of the conversion to adoption of the digital technologies. So that is where it is going to help in a great way, for the simple reason that entire control, as we talk in the government language, controls and the monitoring systems are going to be through the digital technologies. And that is where the decarbonization or the race or our approach towards the net zero by 2070 or adoption of the COP27 commitments, COP25 and COP27 commitments, that is all going to be with the help of the digital technology. And I said earlier also, the crux is not is on the how we manage our batteries, how do we manage our battery management systems and the cars, and that is all going to help in the decarbonization. And this the battery storage is going to be very, very critical. It's not only related with the mobility or the electric vehicle. It's going to be critical in terms of the energy transition, which is going to take place, and that is where again the application of the digital technologies are going to be critical.
Okay.
You're on mute, Satish.
Satish, you're on mute.
Satish,
Can you
you're
hear me
on
now?
mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So thank you, Professor. Thank you for that. Any other angle on digitalization? Then I want to move to the number 7 there in the center, where it's our customers and people, right? We talked about customers. I want to talk about talent there.
No, digitalization is something like what Mr. Parag also was saying, like car as a service, and as such new business models will come up due to digitalization. The second point I'll also say is the entire vehicle is also getting digitalized, from all the analog signals getting into kind of CAN base. That is important to make the vehicle more efficient. So these are 2 points I thought regarding digitalization.
Absolutely.
Maybe one point to add, Satish, is oftentimes when we talk about digitalization, it's more optimistic as well, but we'll have to, I think, carefully look into the cybersecurity aspects, both concerning the vehicle as well as the entire ecosystem in that sense. And I think more efforts, honestly, have to go in from every, OEMs and the digital service providers to sort of how do we, how do we have a foolproof system in some sense from a purely cybersecurity perspective.
Absolutely. A new insight. Absolutely. Very important.
Yeah.
I don't see your hands being raised here. So if you can, Avinash, you can help me. Some hands are raised. You can tell me.
No, Satish.
Okay. So then I move on to we have 10 more minutes, right? I'll make sure that we are giving 1 minute until close in 9 minutes, right? So that we have some time to transition as well. So let's focus on the number 7 there, right? This is a change. This change is coming, and it's a big change. Change when it comes to the consumer behavior, change it comes to our customers, change it comes to evolution and of technologies. There is a change evident, right? And today it is electric, tomorrow it could be something else, so it's a lot of change here. So to live and lead the change, we need people. Talent is extremely important, right? And what is the current state of talent pool in India for the industry, EV industry? Do we have enough talent in India? Can we learn? And I think someone was talking about before, can we learn, help them unlearn and learn something in the EV space so that we can mitigate the shortage of talent, if any? Any thoughts on talent so that from a live and lead the change perspective? Avinash, you may like to pitch in as well, or your team as well. You guys are working on talent as well, so please feel free.
Yeah, sure, Satish. So, from what we've been hearing from the industry experts, yes, there is enough and more talent when it comes to IC engines, but the transition that is happening now within the industry, there certainly is a large gap when it comes to the kind of talent that is required here. And so there are, multiple, things that are being tried. Build versus buy versus import. So a lot of stuff is happening when it comes to talent. I'm sure Anup will agree. A lot of their SMEs, have been, imported or, have come from other geographies as well. At your end also, Satish, at Volvo, I'm sure all of these SMEs are coming, from from different geographies where it's more developed, and I think the ecosystem is slightly kind of better than in India. So yeah, Satish, I'd like to hear from the rest here.
So please go ahead, and the others, if you can give things some more talent perspective.
Anup has raised his hand.
Okay, yeah, I have raised my hand. So yeah, I think for the last 5 years I've been in the EV space, so I think I can speak for this. So I think it's important to look at it from a completely what I call code to road perspective here. So I think from a India standpoint, right? So data scientists, AI, the digital talent pool, I think we have a lot of access to, even though it comes at a price at the moment. But if you talk about the quality, I think it's quite phenomenal, I would say. But I think there are largely, if you look at we've been seeing the trend for the last at least 2 years, that in some sense the talent gap that was existing in the entire telematics space, there is a significant movement that is happening between the tier 1 suppliers, people working for, let's say, Bosch, Continental, and things like that. They are moving towards up in the value chain. They would like to be part of the OEMs, and that's where the maximum effort has been also to sort of hire folks from these organizations where they could specifically work on telematics, ECUs, and stuff like that. However, Harish also can support me here. I think there is a deficit in terms of let's say talent pool when we talk about this specific skills, let's say cell chemistry, the entire battery aspects. So it is there, it is available, but if you have to realize the 2030 vision, is it enough? No, I think that is one area that we would need more people. It's also, these are some of the direct, let's say, talents that are working in the, let's say, OEM and the direct product or process related. However, if you look at it from a consulting aspect, right? So the whole, management consulting, the technology consulting, and then the operational consulting. There's a lot of gap in there as well, because I think in order to establish a robust supply chain, so you would need those folks as well to pitch into the ecosystem and contribute. So there's a gap, and there's always an opportunity as well too. So I think this is one such area which will expand, in my view, significantly. So yeah, I think this is largely my observations, but yeah.
Thank you, Anup. There, we have 4 more minutes, right? So we have Pushpak Raj and also, please go ahead.
Professor wants to kind of come in, and then Pushkar Raj.
Yeah.
Professor, you want? Yeah, sure.
I would only like to add that if you consider the talent pool, and if the comparison is between the internal combustion engine vehicles and the electric vehicles, then even today I would say that we have a stronger talent pool in terms of the electric vehicle. Now we are much better placed globally in terms of the talent pool. If you consider the entire electric vehicle, whether it is a powertrain or whether the engine or motor or other things. Only thing is that we have not done sufficient work in the advanced cell chemistry for historical reasons, but we are much better placed. The Indian academia is also coming up very quickly, and fortunately now that the things are turning toward the electronic controls, we are much better placed, and we are growing very fast in that direction.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Professor there. And any final comment, any comments from you, Pushpak Raj, and then I can summarize.
Yes. So the last thing I would like to add is I come from a tier 2 city. My company is placed in tier 2 city. So talent pool hiring is one of the most difficult challenge for me. It's different than what most people here must be facing. It's kind of good and kind of bad. It limits the pool that I can look into for hiring, but it also gives me a pool which is actually serious about their job. So it's a bonus also, and somewhat of a problem also.
Thank you, Pushpak Raj. It was a pleasure to interact with you. If I summarize, and then I will hand it over to Avinash. So the future, when it comes to EV space, is here and now. Technology disruptions and evolution is very evident when I hear to all that's happening, right? The challenges coming from challenges to the EV industry with different other things. So it is very much happening. The technology disruptions, evolution is happening. We have thousands of products with batteries in India and world over, even today. And I think the whole team has fantastically contributed to those inputs there. But this is going to be millions. These products are going to be millions in the future. The time is to scale and see how we can do the best in India, but also do the best from India. So thank you for this great opportunity to interact with all of you. And also personally, I learned a lot and also made some good network and connections as well. Thank you for this opportunity. Over to you, Avinash.
Thank you, Satish, for driving this so well. In fact, like you mentioned, this space is evolving at a really rapid pace. A lot of stuff is still in the fluidic, and I think the industry, the policymakers, and the academia will have to come together to kind of build these partnerships, like you mentioned, very, very important. It was lovely having all of you, and I certainly learned again a lot from within the industry, and I hope each one of you have learned something as well. And we will keep this dialogue on. We actually have a technology game changers group which is on LinkedIn. We will share with you a link of that. You can join that group and participate actively, contribute, so that we can learn from one another. Yeah, I mean, we'll come back to you with more such sessions, on future technologies. Thank you so much indeed for being here, taking time, and contributing to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.